Hola Brawlers! Hello Brawlers! Greetings from your game host manager Iz! Have you seen our previous video about the great leader Genghis Khan? If you haven't, go check it out after you finish watching this video. The link can be found in the description box below. And if you did, what did you think of him? Do you think he'll be a good character in the game of Eternal Brawl? I bet he will be amazing. Please share me your thoughts on our Telegram and Discord channels. And now, you might be wondering, why does Iz have kind of a different look? Actually, I'm loving it and I'm thinking of going more on these vibes in my day-to-day life as well. But anyhow, I decided to wear this hat and this look because it reminds me a lot of the UK and London, and it was actually brought from there. And I did this because the character that I'm gonna talk to you about today is originated from London. Can you guess? He is from the Terrence category. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the infamous character who hides behind the name Jack the Ripper. The Jack the Ripper murders occurred on the east of London on the Whitechapel district in 1888. And although the Whitechapel murder was only a threat to a small community in a small section of London, the crimes had an impact on society as a whole. Indeed, by putting the eyes of the press and the public on the streets and the people of an area of London that was considered the most dangerous, the most poor, and just crime-ridden everywhere, Jack the Ripper, whoever he may have been, ended up exposing the sordid underbelly of Victorian society. And in this way, he created awareness among the wealthiest people of London of how they had allowed to develop these terrible social conditions in a place at the doorstep of the city of London, which is and was one of the most richest and wealthiest areas of Earth. I don't really think he murdered these women so that he could create awareness of how people and wealthy people had just left all of these social conditions unchecked and didn't care about this area of London and people who were suffering here. I mean, maybe he did. Who knows? I guess we will never know. But at least he did, because it's important to realize that there are sections of our places and our countries that sometimes we leave aside and they end up decaying and people are in danger, and that's not fair. But anyhow, this is not a politics or a social economics class. I'm sorry, I'm just blabbering here. Let's continue on with Jack the Ripper. Some dozen murders between 1888 and 1892 have been speculatively attributed to Jack the Ripper. However, only 5 of these, all committed in 1888, were linked by the police to a single murder. These are known as the canonical 5, and they include the murders of the following women. Mary Ann Nichols, body found August 31st. Annie Chapman, body found September 8th. Elizabeth Stride, body found September 30th. Catherine or Kate Edos, body found September 30th. And finally, Mary Jane Kelly, body found November 9th. Oh God, can you imagine living here in the there in the Whitechapel district, and in a matter of a month and some days, finding so many women dead? Oh God. According to the common assumptions of the time, all the victims were prostitutes, and all but one of them, Kelly, were murdered while soliciting on the streets. Now, this belief was taken for granted by books written in this time and after that tried to guess who Jack the Ripper was and describe with graphic details how the murders occurred. Now, in a radical departure from this genre, the British social historian Hayley Rubenholt argued differently in her book published in 2019 called The Five: The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. Rubenhall said that there was no evidence that these things about the prostitutes were true, and that actually, neither Nicole, neither Edos, neither Chapman were prostitutes, and that Stride actually only solicited in periods of desperate poverty and emotional suffering, and that there is no evidence that she was soliciting on the night or the day that she was murdered. And basically that the only verifiable prostitute of the five was Kelly. Now, Rubenhall says that this notion that Jack the Ripper was a murderer of prostitutes was just a consequence of the misogynistic and class-based prejudices characteristic of the Victorian era. Pretty interesting analysis, right? Yeah, all those prejudices that they had, and that maybe we still do. But even more surprising is the fact that a book about this was published in 2019. It shows the impact that these crimes still have and how mind-boggling they are. Anyhow, in each instant, the victim's throat was cut and the body was mutilated in a way that indicated that the murderer had some knowledge on human anatomy. Well, that's like even more creepy and gives us a clue of who it could be. Anyhow, on one occasion, half a human kidney, who might have been half a kidney of one of the murdered victims, was sent to the police. The police also received a series of very curious and taunting notes from someone who claimed to be the murderer, but they could not track him. Strenuous and sometimes curious efforts were made to find and identify and trap this killer, all to no avail. And the failure of not being able to capture and arrest this really creepy and dangerous being led to a public uproar and anger against the Home Secretary and the London Police Commissioner, who ended up resigning soon after. Wow, imagine the pressure for you to have this big of a role and resign. People must have been so scared that they were pressuring and really angry against them. Now, Brawlers, with you, the most common and cited suspects to be Jack the Ripper. First up, Montague Dreet, a barrister and teacher with an interest in surgery who was said to be insane and disappeared after the last murders and was later found dead. Number 2, Michael Ostrog, a Russian criminal and physician who was put in an asylum for his homicidal tendencies. Number 3, and the last of the most commonly cited suspects, Aaron Kaminsky, a Polish Jew who was also a resident of the Whitechapel district and who was said to have a great hatred towards women, especially prostitutes, and was put in an asylum several months after the last murders. Now, for the 4th and 5th subjects who have also been speculatively attributed to be very probable suspects to be Jack the Ripper are very notable Londoners of the era. First up, the painter, Walter Sickert, and the physician, Sir William Gull. So of these 5, Brawlers, tell me, who do you think was the real Jack the Ripper? It's really hard to choose because all of them sound scary. What if it was all of them? Nah, that sounds more like a telenovela. Anyhow, let's keep going with the story. One of the things that puzzles the people the most about this murder spree that occurred so long ago is why they are still so famous and they still talk about them and investigate them when they occurred more than 100 years ago. Well, it says that maybe they have been retained on the popular imagination so much is because of the fact that instances of serial killers were not too common then, or maybe were not talked about as much. But anyhow, we still think because if Jack the Ripper really only ended up killing 5 women, then he is not as prolific as some of the serial killers we talk about today. And if his so-called reign of terror only lasted 12 or so weeks, then he wasn't there for an immense amount of time to keep causing terror on people. However, with no doubt we can say that he is one, if not the most famous serial killers of all times. What? How? What is the cause of his infamy? Here are some reasons that we speculate about. First off, newspapers of the day gave a huge amount of coverage to the murders, and they would continue to provide daily updates to all the citizens of London, which ended up creating this menacing figure. You know, we all know the press has a lot of power. If the press keeps talking about something and creates noise, we listen, we get scared. Yeah. Secondly, it was that the place, the area where all these killings occurred, were basically perceived as a hotbed for vice and villainy, and the breeding ground for social unrest, squalor, and disease. Therefore, the Whitechapel murderer, in the eyes of the wider Victorian society, came to be seen as the personification of all the evils that the East of London was associated with. Created this image which makes people keep thinking about it, talk about it, and remember. And finally comes the name, because we all know that when a big name and a creepy and weird name is given to something, we also remember. Now, this name, Jack the Ripper, first appeared in the signature of a letter that was sent to the head of a London news agency at the end of September 88. And this name started taking. People started using it to refer it. And it was a name that was probably invented by a journalist, but it was what ended up turning 5 sordid East London murders to an international phenomenon, and then created an unknown killer into a legend. A very scary and creepy legend that we talk about today. Indeed, the Whitechapel murders are probably the most studied crimes in history. And still today, a huge amount of research is being conducted worldwide about them. Oh God, so many questions still unanswered. And what a sordid story that is still famous decades and decades after. And more than a story, a character that still continues to live in the imaginations and research of so many people. Now, with no doubt, Jack the Ripper will be a menacing character in the Eternal Brawl. Do you want to know more of the types of skills that he will have? Let's check them out, Brawlers. On the battlefield, he has an above-average comprehensive ability score of 67, with an attack mode of 70 and a defense mode of 50. Jack the Ripper has an explosive force of 41 and a control level of 37 with a support rating of 41. What do you all think of this character, Brawlers? Definitely he gives such a creepy vibes. And you see the graphics? He also wears a hat like mine. Maybe that's why I chose it, to channel my Jack the Ripper. No, I don't have any Jack the Ripper inside me. The London people, or no, actually, I don't want to be the murdered London women. Just cool London women of today. Anyhow, Brawlers, tell me what you think of the second character from our Terrance category after Genghis Khan. Let me know your thoughts, and remember that to be able to summon all of these heroes, you are going to be needing summoning stones. The pre-sale is still there. So what are you waiting for? Go get your bags. Go get eternalbrawl.io. Load up your bags and then check out all the other characters that are also there on our website, eternalbrawl.io, if you didn't hear that right the first time. Anyhow, Brawlers, a pleasure sharing another cool character with you. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to follow us on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, and Instagram so you can stay tuned with all of our content. And without further ado, stay cool, Brawlers.